and people do come in and out of the room, but they're not like aggressive or scared. You know what I mean? They don't bother us. They don't ask us for anything.
That's good.
Yeah,
I like downtown. Like some people are scared of me, but I like it down there.
Oh my god, that's like a natural part of it. So like my dad grew up in
So even like
yeah. Yeah, but helped me several times. Like, I missed the bus one time, the last bus home, I was in Midtown and we were with promotion.
yeah.
And this homeless guy let me use phone all the way. I did have to kick one of them out of me. He's like, I'm a preacher. And I was like, well, we're having a baby training. He's like, can I stay for it? And I was like, and then he said to the guy next to him, was like, I'm not interested, I'm Catholic. And the homeless guy was like, you're not Catholic. And I was like, all right, you got it. You can't be serving religious fights in the middle of my social media training.
Yeah. Can't believe you see her for time. So you like stay until like 5?
Yeah, if the meeting goes until midnight, then I'll stay until midnight.
Oh my gosh. I make me feel this is horrible.
No, I have that at most of these but
Like you said,
not really. I just fear in case he needs something, or like when they were having these debates about how it is well with the property of his and his children are married, I texted you and said you should ask about protecting the property. I grew up in a property that was burned later, and it was just a quick process. It was getting get occupants off and shut it down. I'm not sure it ever came to that. Oh yeah. Oh no, like in what?
Actually I've seen it before.
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. Once about the Uber ordinance, and then once about the ordinance for the hotel.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that. That was really good. Yeah, I have to get the pitch report right here on and I never spoke.
Oh no, I mean, I will preface all this with saying like I have a lot of competitive debate experience.
Oh yeah, were you in the debate club at your
Yeah,
Oh,
and so
okay.
like I debated. Yeah, I've debated like
Yeah.
Harvard and going toe to toe with you. Absolutely. Yeah, I support that. Say yourself.
Wait, so are you with Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just got elected.
Oh,
No, thank you. I'm excited about it, but I'm hopeful that soon we'll find like I would love to find it's gonna be a long time, but I'm happy to hold on August 20th. No, on the
I'd like to call the Anchorage Assembly meeting to order. Please, as our regularly scheduled meeting for July 25th. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Mr. Weddle.
Mr. Weddleton,
Here.
Mr. Rivera,
Present.
Mr. Steele,
Here.
Ms. LaFrance,
Here.
Mr. Cheney,
Here.
Mr. Dunbar. He asked to be excused. He is on guard duty in Mongolia, I believe.
He's not on guard duty. He's on duty with the guard in Mongolia.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney.
There's a difference.
Mr. Croft,
Here.
Mr. Peterson,
Present.
Mr. Constant,
Here.
Ms. Domboski,
Present.
Mr. Dyson. You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. France, would you listen to the pledge, please?
Of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no minutes of previous meetings. Mr. Mayor.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay. Assembly Chair's report. There's really nothing. Just take a look at your email because the clerk's office is sending us out messages that tell us when the meetings are that we need to attend. So please follow that. If you're not getting it, let the clerk know and make sure it gets to you. Well, let's see. Committee reports. Anything, Mr. Dyson? We'll start with you, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Domboski, ma'am.
No report.
Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, brief report. We are coming up to an AMATS meeting this week, and I had somebody make a request to find some information. We're trying to figure out what happened to the remainder funds from the bridge project, that once the bridge was deprogrammed, there was supposed to be $50 million or so spent locally within 50 miles of the bridge. So we're kind of trying to, I'm going to ask AMATS to help me figure that out. So
Who do you have looking for that for you?
it's, I just put it on the table, and I'm going to ask Craig for help.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Ethics and Election Committee will not be meeting this month. The meeting has been canceled because we have a luncheon going on with an economic forecast tomorrow. We'll be meeting at our normal fourth Wednesday in August. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, the Public Safety Committee meeting was canceled because of that AADC lunch, as well as scheduling conflicts with other departments. We will have August 2nd and August 16th Public Safety Committee meetings. Or, I'm sorry, we're not having them in August. They'll be starting again in September.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilton, sir.
The Community and Economic Development Committee met last week and reviewed 3 marijuana applications that we will see later this evening. And we also talked briefly about the process for on-site consumption of marijuana in Anchorage. It was generally approved by the state and with a 60-day comment period. So the clerk's office is working on various options that we'll start looking at after that public review period. So keep posted on that for a few months from now.
Thank you, sir. Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Enterprise Committee last Thursday, we had a presentation from the port with regards to their ongoing projects on the basically pile process, but the upgrades at the port. And we will, barring any unforeseen, have another meeting third Thursday in August.
Are we planning a trip for Assembly members into the pilings themselves so they can take a look at how deteriorated they are?
We're allowing that option. And we can put a plaque right on the piling that they're in
Just for
turn.
Assembly members, if you've never been in the pilings, they put you on a little ship and will take you in the pilings. Because it's one thing to hear how deteriorated they are, they're another to actually see it. And so that would be good if you get a chance to do it. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a meeting of the Assembly Committee on Homelessness last Wednesday. It was a robust meeting, to say the least. We reviewed some point-in-time data, and we had a good discussion on a new potential project for seniors who are homeless. That is it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now down to addendum to the agenda. Mr. Wilson, I need a motion move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda laid on the table items
Move to incorporate the addendum to the agenda
and the laid on table items
And laid
in the
on the
consent
table
agenda.
and the consent. Whoop.
Is there a second? Second. Moved in second. I'll go through these. On the addendum to the agenda, you've got item 9B5, Resolution AR 2017-267, Resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, MOA, appropriating $28,238.55 as the fund contributions from the 2017 Planning Department Operating Budget Area-Wide General Fund 101 to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund 231, agreement from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions Consolidated MOA Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, update in the Planning Department, Transportation Planning Division, item 9B5A, Assembly Memorandum of Companies at AM 572-2017. A new business, there's item 9D20, Assembly Memorandum AM 573-2017, cooperative purchase from Field Turf Northwest Incorporated for artificial turf purchase and installation for the Municipality of Anchorage, Parks and Recreation Department, PRD, $421,345.68 the Purchasing Department. On the laid on the table items, there is item 9D21, Assembly Memorandum AM 574-2017, temporary redesignation of licensed premises for the Sheridan Anchorage Hotel liquor license number 1443 to allow the THC and hemp fair to hold an educational fair within the licensed premises. From the Assembly Chair training. There's no other laid on the table items I know of. Does anybody have anything? If not, let me get this screen to work. Okay. Start voting. This will be voting to incorporate these items into the agenda. We need one more.
Mr. Dyson.
Who?
Mr. Dyson.
Mr. Dyson, sure. Well, no, there we go. Okay. That is approved. Now I need a motion on the consent agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we're now going to go those items the assembly members wish to pull for further discussion. Let's see. Why not, Felix? I know what you've got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull items 9 Delta 17, 9 Delta 18, and 9 Delta 19. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
9 Delta 17, 9 Delta 18, 9 Delta 19. These are all SAP related. You want these to be heard after we deal with the money coming into SAP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make that motion when we get to that.
I know.
Thank you.
I just want the body to know why you pulled that many of them. Mr. Steele, sir. Mr. France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull 9D11 and 9D20 for discussion.
Okay. Mr. Whittleton, sir.
Nothing.
Mr. Croft, sir.
Nothing to pull.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No items this evening.
You what, sir? Nothing? Okay. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yes, sir. I would like to request that item 9F2 be heard at the Community and Economic Development Committee. I know that's for introduction. 9 Frank 2. And also, if need be, a work session on that item.
One or the other.
Let me just take a look at it.
No need for hold that one. He just needs to make a note.
That's the property on Orchard Street?
Yes, sir.
We can do that, Barbara.
And it doesn't need to be pulled, just I would like a committee meeting.
No, we'll do it for you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
You don't need to pull it. We'll take care of it. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 9 Delta 16.
Okay. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Nothing.
Okay. So we have pulled item 9D17, 9D18, 9D19, 9D11, 9D20, 9D16. Anything else, Madam Clerk?
That's all I have.
Okay. Please vote. This will vote on the balance of consent agenda. Those items are not pulled. Who are we missing?
Mr. Dennison. There you go.
Okay.
We're good.
That is a pulled. Well, now we're going to go back to those items that were pulled for the further discussion. First one should be item 9D11.
Move to approve.
Second. Second. Mr. France, this is the same memorandum AM 564 2017, incorporated purchase from Vera Whole Health. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that we will see the amount of $10 million again as an appropriation before this body. And at this time, I wanted to mention that a work session is scheduled for
August 4th.
August 4th. Thank you.
Any other discussion from assembly members? If not, please vote on it.
Mr. Chair, I'm in the queue.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we're talking about in this Assembly memorandum is an opportunity for the City of Anchorage to have a collaborative effort with the Anchorage School District and basically create our own health clinic where our employees could go. The fiscal note on this, in this initial, the first go-round anyway, is asking for $10,851,402. I believe this is of a substantial interest to the public. And since we are having a work session on August 4th, I'll move to postpone this item until August 8th. And I would like to set it for public hearing.
Second.
If I could speak to my motion?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said, we've all seen the headlines talking about how the City of Anchorage is facing a $20 million deficit next year. We had a brief discussion about this at a joint meeting with the Anchorage School Board, and I think it's of great public interest to vet this a little bit further and to allow the public to participate. That's why I made my motion, and I would appreciate the body's support.
Okay. Discussion from assembly members. Mr. France, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to direct questions to the administration.
Go ahead.
If that is okay. Okay.
Which administration person? There. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Gina Penny. I'm the Director of Employee Benefits at the municipality.
Thank you. Question concerning timing. I understand that there's a long lead time in setting up these clinics, and that is the reason why we have the memorandum before us. If we postpone, is there any issue with jeopardizing the opening of the clinic come January 2018?
Yes. The longer we delay in approving the memorandum, the longer it takes to open the clinic. Right now, we're looking at a January effective date. If we don't approve this tonight, we jeopardize that, and it could be February or March.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We've got Mr. Webster. Do you have a question for her?
No, that would.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, if we have any other questions, we'll bring you up. Is that
I have
okay,
one.
Or anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I support waiting. I have been inundated with calls about an additional $5.8 million attached to an $81 million project that started as a $9 million project. And my due diligence alarm is going off that we would be wise to spend a little time contemplating the ramifications of the action. And if it costs us 2 months on the front end, but saves us 2 years waiting to get it on the road, it seems like a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Penny, for your testimony today. I'm a little perplexed in how waiting 2 weeks could delay the opening 2 months. Could you give me the basis for your analysis?
Through the chair, the basis is for every little bit that is delayed, Vera is doing some initial or preliminary work for us, but of course, until the contract is signed, and we're working on that as well, but that takes time because we have our attorneys involved. It just continues to build that time.
Okay, so I've opened multiple clinics in my professional capacity. And again, you still haven't justified a 2-week delay just going out, now is going to be 2 months? I don't understand. Is it because she might be signing another contract with someone? What is the basis? I mean, when we delay something for 2 weeks, then to tell us it could delay the opening by 2 months, to me, that's just not adding up.
So through the chair, they have to the Veraho Health Clinic staff, the administration in Seattle, has to hire staff, and it takes a little bit longer here in Alaska to hire that staff. It took a little bit longer to hire the lead physician for the Anchorage School District contract, and honestly, I'm not sure if they've hired that person yet or not. So it does take a little bit longer here in Alaska to hire the qualified staff for them.
Thank you for your answer, and I have no further questions for you, but I just want to make a couple comments. So in my professional capacity, this is what I did, is I build and managed clinics. They happen to be dental clinics instead of healthcare clinics, but it's the same philosophy. And I don't see any basis for saying a delay would take 2 months to have 2 weeks. And Mr. Constant hit the nail on the head. The reason I asked for this to have a public hearing is we all know there are serious fiscal issues that we're facing as a city. And if it means that we have to do our due diligence and wait 2 weeks and have a work session, which I applaud, and really drill into what this is going to cost us and where we really think the savings are going to come from, I think that's essential. And I'll just say, if we don't delay this, I will be a no vote, because I don't think we have done our proper due diligence. We had one brief conversation in a joint meeting with the school board, and unless I missed it somewhere, I don't think we've quite dug into the details enough. And so I really do urge a 2-week delay, but I'll respect whichever way the body goes.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. France.
A question, Mr. Chair. This is a memorandum. What degree does this commit us in terms of action and spending? I know we will see this as an appropriation later.
We'll have an appropriation, but this will commit the city.
Okay.
You know, Mr. Constant's right in that if the decision's made now, you need to have enough information to make the decision.
Absolutely. But we will be signing, the city would sign a contract after we
Let me ask legal.
approve or authorize.
Mr. Falsey, we approve this. Is that going to commit the city to this course of action? Whoever wants to answer that.
Through the chair, I'll yield to purchasing, but basically what we have here is we have a commitment for 1 year with a 3-year contract. The $10 million is for 3-year contract, so the commitment would be for that 3 years with expenditure for the first.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilton, sir.
Ms. Penny, so you mentioned we have a dollar amount in front of us, but you mentioned you're still working on the contract. So how would we know the dollar cost if you don't have your contract done yet?
Well, the contract is in draft form, so we know what the contract says, and we have a return on investment analysis from Veraho Health, and they have incorporated that into the contract. The second piece of that is this is the same contract that the Anchorage School District signed some time ago, except for the actual dollar amount. Our clinic is a little larger, so it's going to cost a little bit more for startup costs and for staffing.
So you know what it will cost down. This goes down to the $2, but you don't have the contract. It's surprising to me.
Well, we have the draft contract, and we're working on the language. The contract isn't just about the fiscal part of it. It's also about what's included in the clinic services, what Vera's obligations are, what the municipality's obligations are, et cetera. Liability, limited, all those things.
So if we had a work session in about 10 days, would you have that pretty much hammered out and we'd get a peek at it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, through the chair, we can absolutely do that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Constant.
Thank you, sir. Is there revenue attached to this then as a health clinic? Are we billing insurance? How does that work?
So through the chair, how this works is there is a per participant per month administrative fee that we will pay to Vera. They will then provide services, healthcare services for providers, health coaches, nurse practitioners, et cetera. And those claims would not go to our third-party administrator. Then we will, on top of the administrative fee that we will pay, we will have pass-through costs for labs, radiology, some pharmaceuticals, and also the overhead and operating costs of the clinic will be passed through. So there's some transparency in it.
Right. So let me just kind of dig a little deeper so I understand. So I support the idea of the municipality operating its own health clinic if it saves money and it provides better care, importantly. And so if, say, I'm a municipal employee that participates in this, and I go in and I put in my health care card, and there's a bill, and it's paid, those revenues are split between the contractor. Vera profits from those dollars on top of these $3 million, or does that offset the cost that we would see?
Through the chair, it offsets the cost that we would see from the health plan. So we would no longer be paying Premier Blue Cross Blue Shield, or they would not be paying our claims for us. We would pay that $17 per member per month to Vera Health.
So would it be possible to see kind of a balance sheet that would show the savings over time?
Through the chair, yes, we have some estimates from Vera.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was kind of my question too. We're currently providing these services, but by an insurance mechanism that we reimburse for, I suspect. And we anticipate by providing it to everybody in a clinic setting that there will be savings. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, sir.
And what's the ballpark of the savings?
Through the chair, for the first 3 years, it's it's over $11 million, almost 12.
Okay. Yeah, I still think we ought to have the conversation, but it seems to me it's a net positive benefit. So both in terms of service for the employees, but also in terms of cost. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Croft, sir.
Mr. Steele said what I wanted to, so that's fine.
Mr. Busky, could you restate your amendment, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to postpone Assembly Memorandum number AM 564-2017 to the meeting of August 8th and set it for public hearing for the same date.
Thank you. Please vote. That passed unanimously. That item will come back in front of the body on August 8th. We do have a work session planned for the 4th of August. What time do we plan that for, ma'am?
Just one moment, Mr. Chair.
We can pick it up later. Right?
Yeah. It will be from 1:30 to 2:15 on Friday, August 4th.
Okay. Everybody hear that? August 4th?
Yes. Friday, August 4th from 1:30 until 2:15.
Lunch will not be served, so please come. Next one in front of us will be item 9D16. Memorandum AM 570-2017. Ms. Dombrowski, I think you pulled that one.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move to bifurcate item 9 Delta 16 to take up Green Labs and Babylon Company first, and then Arctic Herbery second.
Take which one first, ma'am?
I would like to group Green Labs and Babylon Company as one group, and then secondarily, I would like to take up Arctic Herbery.
Okay. Point of order. Go ahead.
Just as a point, we have Arctic Herbery on here for retail and...
Yeah, just both.
Both.
Yeah,
both. Do you understand? We haven't done that since the new members come on. What we're talking about is bifurcating the issue. So it's going to come up two different ways. We'll approve or not all of them except for Arctic Herbery, and then we'll deal with Arctic Herbery. That's what bifurcation does. It separates the issues out.
Okay, and I'm going to make you
Barbara?
bifurcate and then
move.
Then we need a motion on them, I know. I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're doing.
So the first motion we're voting on is to separate them.
To bifurcate, yes, ma'am.
I need a second.
We need a second on the motion to
Second.
bifurcate. Moved and seconded. Please vote. It's on bifurcation. That was approved by the body. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve Green Labs and Babylon Company.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I would just like to say, if I could, Green Labs is one that recently has been approved. We've had no complaints, no issues with it. Babylon Company, I've heard zero from them as far as complaints or issues. So I do recommend approval of these ones.
Any other discussion from assembly members? If not, please vote. That was approved. Next one, Ms. Dombrowski.
Move to approve Arctic Herbery.
You probably need both of them.
Both cultivation and retail.
Yeah, both of them.
Okay. Both the agriculture and the retail.
Right.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Move to second. Ms. Dombrowski?
Thank you. And for the new members, if you're not tracking, the reason I move to approve it is because you have to approve it or have a motion in order to discuss it. This particular one caught my attention a long time ago, as it did many others, but I noticed on page 195 of our packet that Arctic Herbery has indicated in their retail section that on page 195, about just over halfway down, they check the box that says, I certify that I have not violated any restrictions pertaining to this particular license type, and that this license has not been operated in violation of a condition or restriction imposed by the Marijuana Control Board. I have concerns because this was an organization that was giving out free samples, and they were fined, and they did pay the fine. So clearly, to me, that's a violation. Now, the lawyers, I'm assuming, are going to argue semantics, because they hadn't publicly opened, but we had issued them a license. So I have a couple concerns about that. I think if we approve it tonight, we need to approve it with language noting the citation, the date, and the amount. That way, because this is going to the Marijuana Control Board. That way we've done our due diligence and full disclosure. But secondarily, I was out of town last week, so I didn't get a chance to go to the Community and Economic Development Committee, and I would like to hear from either members or the chair to see if there was any discussion about this, if there's been any more complaints, because when this one specifically came up, we have told the public routinely we were going to set this for public hearing upon renewal, and we're not doing that tonight. So I want to know, was the decision consciously made to do that, or is this something that just kind of slipped through the cracks?
I can address that.
Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, I believe that an email was sent to the members, and I think that there was a code change, and I don't have it right in front of me, but the code change that you've done said that public hearings may be set for renewal applications. This is a renewal application, so they're not mandatory. So actually, the clerk's office anticipated this process, which is why we sent the email to you all reminding you about that code section that you may set for public hearing.
Thank you for that answer, Madam Clerk, and I'm full aware of the code. But in the Community Economic Development Committee, we had numerous conversations about how these would be scheduled, and so that's why I was asking if there had been a conscious decision to not have a public hearing, because I didn't want to put it for a public hearing if you guys had already gone through it and said you didn't want to. The biggest concern we had as a committee was we've been telling everybody for a year, when this came up for renewal, you'll have a chance to come and testify on it, and we haven't afforded that opportunity, so it gives me concern. And I just wanted to know if there was a conscious effort to do that, or if I can set it for a public hearing for next meeting.
Mr. Whittleton has an answer for you, ma'am.
I don't have an answer, a little information, though. We did not discuss any of these specifically at our previous meeting, but I do understand your points. I know we had discussed that at length when we changed the ordinance. And in regards to Arctic Herbery's citations, and we might, point of personal privilege, call Mr. Bryant up and his attorney, because I believe what ultimately happened is it was not against the license, but it was against they opened before they had a CCO.
See, this is where we get into semantics,
Right.
because we as an assembly had issued, we had approved the license, but they hadn't met all their conditions yet, right? But they were issued a citation, and they did pay the citation to the city. So that's where I'm getting back to this. I think it's our duty to disclose that to the Marijuana Control Board. So again, I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Weddleton.
No, that's fine. I'm not sure that it was a citation against the license, so it was more of a code violation, Title 21, building code kind of thing, is my recollection on that. So that he did not mention it in this packet seems kind of in line with that. I think the packet would be, do you have violations against your license? And I'm not aware that it ultimately was against this
We go
license.
now, Paul, we get violation notices.
It doesn't say against the license. It says pertaining to the license, and he wouldn't have been able to have a violation if he hadn't had a marijuana shop. I mean, we're in a catch-22, chicken or egg. Do you know what I'm saying? So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll just end the debate by just trying to make a motion to set this for public hearing, and I think we can hammer out with legal whether we need to make an amendment.
Before you make one, Mr. Constant would like to get into this, ma'am.
And
I understand where you're going, and I've got no problem with that, Amy, but I want to get everybody's comments out first.
Sounds good.
Mr. Constant.
Yeah, procedurally, I think then we have a duty to bifurcate once again, if that's allowable under the rules, and separate the cultivation and the retail license, and clarify that the cultivation license is ready to go and let them get on with their business. And the other one, if there's further conversation, great. But, we're now in January 2, so I'd make a motion to bifurcate yet again.
Second.
Motion was made to bifurcate the issue, so we're going to be dealing with just the cultivation, then we'll deal with the retail. Okay? Do you understand the motion in front of us is to bifurcate, to just deal with first the agriculture, then we'll cultivation, then we'll deal with the retail. So, okay, it takes a second.
I seconded it.
I know it just takes a second for the
I was going to say,
computer to work.
Yep.
Chris is good, but he can't do both, the first and the second.
I try
It's a
to.
moment, not a second, is what he meant.
The computer thinks I can do it all.
Yeah, you can do it all.
Here, I'll do that. There we go. We fixed it.
Okay. The motion in front of us to bifurcate, please vote. And that was approved. Now I need a motion to approve
Move to approve
the
the cultivation
agricultural-
license.
Cultivation one. I want that
Second.
one first. It was moved, and who seconded it?
I did, sir.
Okay. You got it, Barbara? Okay. Then let's vote on this one.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Please,
ma'am.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to be a sticky widget here. I'm just throwing it out there. Technically speaking, if his retail wasn't open yet, you would assume if he had weed to hand out, it was coming from the cultivation license. I'm just saying. For expedience sake, I will go ahead and I will approve this part. But again, I definitely think it's in our duty to discuss the other one further. But you see what I'm saying. You can't have product to sell unless it came from the cultivation side. Or giveaway, I should say.
Mr. Steele, it's in your area, Mr. Steele.
Yes, it is. If we reflect back, this was, if not the first, one of the first licenses out there. And he got overexcited and jumped the gun in terms of trying to do marketing and catch his share of the market. He got caught, he got punished, and to my knowledge, he has not had any further issues. So let's not get too hung up on what he's been punished for already, and not try to draw this out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, this is just, we have just have in front of us the approval of the
cultivation.
agricultural, so.
Yep. I just, to my friends in the industry, my words of advice are follow the rules as closely as you can.
Mr. Croft.
what Mr. Steele and Constance said.
Okay. Let's vote on this license. Let's vote on the approval of this agricultural license. Basically a growing license. That was approved. Now we're down to the retail license. Ms. Dombrowski, you had the floor last time we discussed.
Thank you. I'm assuming my previous motion to approve this one is still on the table? Or do you want a new one?
No, it's still on the table.
Okay. So as I was saying, this is not to hang somebody out to dry. The fact of the matter is, in my view, as I read this, I think our job is to be as clear as we can and make sure we're sending forward good information. We've spent the last year telling the entire public, when these come up for renewal, you will have the chance to testify on these. And we're not doing that. I find that to be problematic. Now, the code, clearly we made a change that said we don't have to, right? The code says we don't have to. We made that change. But if you were in the Community Economic Development Committee when we recommended that change, we went forward with the full intent to, as the first year goes through, we would have these open for public hearing. I don't anticipate, unless you have a big community outroar, which it doesn't sound like Mr. Steele has had from his district, I don't anticipate you're going to have a lot of people come and testify. But the two concerns I have, number one, is we're not living up to the promise we made to the public when we told them we'd let them testify. Number two, in my view, it is semantics a little bit, whether whether the fine and citation was against the license or not. Frankly, Mr. Thorpe, I don't know if you're here or not. I haven't seen any additional issues come up with this licensee. I don't live in the neighborhood. I don't know if the neighbors have issues or concerns, but I don't have that opportunity to hear them unless we set it for public hearing. So the intent here is not to...
So is your motion to go for a public hearing on this item, ma'am?
Didn't I already have to make the motion? Oh, I'm
did.
so sorry. I thought it was just my time to lament. Mr. Chair, I move to set the retail license on Arctic Herbery for public hearing on August 8th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now the issue in front of us is to have a public hearing on August 8th on this.
Yes, and my hope would be to just to ask legal to help us draft one little sentence just to refer to the citation that was issued, and the Marijuana Control Board can decide what to do or not to do with it at that time.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I recall, we had spoken about having public hearings available on renewals if there had been violations that had been reported by the licensee. And since the Arctic Herbery has officially opened, we have not received any complaints of violations. And so we're sort of in that catch-22 area that Ms. Dombrowski discussed a little earlier. This was the very infancy of a new industry here in Anchorage, and we are hoping to entice people who are used to buying marijuana in the underground black market into buying it over in legal retail establishments. Arctic Herbery was ready to be open for business, was waiting for the last approval so they could open officially. I've been in a situation like this with a different type of business before, where you put your whole life savings into it. You've worked your fingers to the bone to get ready to open that business, and you're waiting for that last certificate to be put up on the wall so you can officially open your door. You have people driving by asking if you're open for business yet, wanting to do business with you, and you see all those zeros in your mind at where your bank account is. And so the pressure is pretty high, I'll have to admit. And so the fact that no other violations have been occurred that have been reported, I think Mr. Bryant has paid his debt to society by agreeing to pay a fine, even though they could have contested that. I will not be supporting bringing this to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. LaFrance, on the issue in front of us to have a public hearing on this item on the 8th of August, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question. This concerns the retail portion. What would be the impact of moving this out and having a public hearing, will this mean the store would be closed for a period of time, or what is the impact to the business? Can someone address that? Or
If I may, we have a certain period of time, it's either 60 or 90 days, to issue our objection or non-objection to the Marijuana Control Board, and then they're going to look at their licenses. So can somebody express to me, I don't know if somebody from the clerk's office can tell me what that window is?
Yes, Ms. Demboski, through the chair, this is a renewal application, and the renewal period is through August 31st. So that is the deadline for the applicant. The business can stay open as long as the assembly approves by August 31st.
Okay. So with that, I don't think there would be any impact. It's still well within the period.
You've still got the floor, ma'am. Any other comments?
no other comments, thank you.
Mr. Croft, sir.
Yeah, well, I think we have done the right thing in that we reserve the right on these renewals to have public testimony if there's a need to, but that doesn't mean we have to do one on everyone. That would be a waste of time. If there'd been any complaints, and I've received none, if there'd been any violations, I think we automatically should, even if there weren't any complaints. But having received neither, I don't see the point in having this. I've supported before motions to delay for public testimony. I think it's very important, but not on a renewal where there has been no either violation or complaint.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I understand Ms. Demboski's comments and arguments, I personally don't agree that they pass muster for exactly the reasons Mr. Croft detailed. Also, this particular retail is inside our assembly district, Mr. Chair, as well. It's shared. It's on the border.
It's shared, but
on the border. And Mr. Thorpe has attended the community councils, the Taco Campbell community councils, and I've heard no concerns from that particular community council. So I will be voting against this concern.
Mr. Constant, sir.
Just going to say, Mr. Rivera, if you were a betting man, you'd bet it was in your district.
No, it's not. He and I have argued about this for a long time, okay? We know where the boundary is. Mr. Steele?
It's in Mr. Croft's and my districts, by the way, and I do want to align myself with Mr. Croft's statements. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then please vote a yes. We'll postpone this to the 8th of August. That's a tie. Motion fails. Motion fails 5-5. So we go back. The computer's great.
But it's a motion to approve the cultivation and the retail.
So we need a separate motion to approve.
Move to approve the retail for Arctic Herbery.
Second.
I'm sorry, what did you say, man?
Move to approve the retail for Arctic Herbery.
Okay.
Second.
And I have a secondary
second.
motion.
Ms. Demboski.
Mr. Chair, I move that the municipal clerk's office is directed to attach the copy of the citation that was issued by the municipality of Anchorage to the packet that goes to the Marijuana Control Board. If I can get a second, I'll explain.
Second.
Thank you. The reason I'm saying this is because, as I said in my original statements, I think it's for the Marijuana Control Board to determine what relevance that should have, but I think it's our duty to disclose all information we have as a municipality. And though there are assembly members that are saying they didn't have a violation, they clearly did. They clearly paid a fine. And I think it's just our job to put forward any information we have on any applicant. And so I would like to direct the clerk's office to attach that citation to this package as it goes forward.
Okay. Mr. Croft, sir.
I think they know. But
I'm sure they do.
We
but
can
this is
attach it anyway, and it'd probably be faster than debating it.
We have a copy machine. We can do it. Okay, we have in front of us a motion to approve this particular item. Ms. Demboski.
We have the motion to attach.
Okay. Right,
So the-
sorry.
The motion to attach is first.
Okay, motion to attach first. Let's vote on that. Ms. Nabowski, man. I know. That was approved. Motion to approve is in front of us. Please vote. That is approved, 8-2. We're now down to item 9D17. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to change the order of the day.
Take this up after what
To
item?
take up all of these items, 9D, 17, 18, and 19, after item 14H.
Second.
Okay. Does everybody know what he's proposing? Okay. I'm going to ask unanimous consent. Is there any objection to that? Not seeing any of those items will appear after item that you mentioned, item 14H. Now we're down to item 9D20 on your addendum to the agenda.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moving to second, this is the same memorandum, AM 573-2017, cooperative purchase from Field Turf Northwest Incorporated for artificial turf purchase and installation for the municipality of Anchorage, $421,345.68. Ms. LaFrance, man.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask Mr. Schutte to come up for questions.
Okay.
And I may also want to ask for a moment of personal privilege.
That's fine, ma'am. We've got time. The car's still running out there. We got time.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte. Would you address the business case associated with purchasing the turf, namely what kind of opportunity you've identified and revenue?
I'd love to, and I'm going to do it by passing it off to John Rada, the Director of Parks and Rec. Through the chair, Ms. LaFrance, what would you like to know?
Everything is my... Specifically, actually, one question that has arisen is this in response to the collapse of the dome in terms of identifying an opportunity? And if that's the case, it's my understanding that we should have a better idea of the fate of the dome in the next 2 weeks or so, and the importance of that being, one, as a competitor, would this buy into your identified prospective revenue, or two, if the dome is offline for good, there may be an opportunity for buying salvage turf from them as well.
Okay, through the chair, Ms. LaFrance, lots of pieces to your to your question. To speak for the dome, I can't, but I've had many conversations with key players. Lots of those people are friends of mine, and we talk frequently about the situation and the prospect of it being rebuilt, if you will. It's still up in the air. I've had assurances that there's a good chance that it will be reconstructed, but I don't think that takes away the other portion that people haven't recognized, and that's the unmet needs for users. And it's not confined just to, some people talk about the dome because, of course, it had a track and it had a field, and they had their own soccer programs and things like that. There are a number of organizations that have stepped forward saying if we had another facility of a similar, not the same size as the dome, but something where, for example, rugby could be played, where futsal could be played, where box lacrosse could be played, where teams could come in addition to what was offered at the Dome, that there was additional opportunities for other sports or to expand the offerings, not to be in competition, but actually, speaking to the revenue side, the facility has to generate new revenues because of what's happened there. This is an opportunity for the community to win and for other services and needs to also be met.
Mr. France?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the funding, and I think the figure is $421,000, where was this money taken from? For example, are there other projects that have been sidelined? We've recently come to understand the situation at the Sullivan Arena, so I'm assuming this is a relatively new proposal to try to capture revenue through offering turf at the Sullivan. And so I'm wondering, like, where the funding is coming from, or what project had to be sidelined.
Okay, through the chair, Ms. LaFrance, project really wasn't sidelined. Let me give you about a 4-year snapshot, and I'll do it as quickly as possible. These funds came from the state, and they were directed in a way to try to improve the parking facilities at the Sullivan Arena, as well as relocate Mulcahy Stadium. The 2 Kaczynski fields to the north would have been removed. Mulcahy Park would have been demolished, and about 480 new parking spaces would have been included where Mulcahy Stadium now sits. There'd be additional improvements for access, the congestion we all feel on 16th Avenue. There'd also be new pedestrian pathways, there'd be some lighting improvements and all those things. They were all part of a package that was actually in concert with the other Sullivan Arena needs, which have been long established. There's a very long list. So the bottom line was to make all that come out, work, would have taken $15 to $18 million. That money's not there. Many people had counted on the state helping fund that, and that's not going to happen probably for quite a while. So redirecting the focus back to Sullivan Arena, again, going back to the list, there are multiple pieces of this project. The turf is just one piece. We have equipment in that facility that has been there since I was there, and that was 35 years ago. I was there when it opened. It's the same stage, it's the same acoustics, it's the same subfloor. These are all things that need to be addressed, and they're on the list. There's things like lighting. And in this particular case, because of that list, and because of what happened with the ACES and some of the changes, you know, we were able to tackle that, if you want to call it, and direct funds, which were actually assigned to Sullivan Arena. So we're not really redirecting. The project got redirected. The funds were available.
So this is state money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rada, how long do we have that state money, that state grant for? Usually there's a time frame that has to be shipped back if we don't use it, or they recalculate to some other area. This came down in 2012. So how much longer do we have to use this money?
Through the chair, Mr. Craney, back to you. The question is, how long? June 30th of next year, it all has to be spent. We got an extension based on some of the conditions. When we changed direction on the project, we asked for an extension. We were granted the extension, so it wasn't reappropriated, and now we're focused on taking care of some of the issues that are associated with the operation.
2018, then.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I've got some questions for you. Mr. Steele, sir, on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad we're addressing this. I do not wish the Dome ill, and that's also in my neck of the woods. And I hope that I hope it's able to come back. They were filling a huge need for activities in our climate. And but we also have needs at the Sullivan Arena, and I'm glad to see that there's some thought in terms of marketing the Sullivan, because we've got to get revenue back into the Sullivan as well. So I think it's a good expenditure. I would advocate for everybody to look at opportunities to use the Sullivan with or without turf, but with the turf that gives a new dimension. So I'm going to be yes vote on it. Thank you.
Mr. Whittleton, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Rada. So what kind of revenue do you expect to generate from the field?
I have not penciled the model as far as a revenue generation. What I can give you by comparison, this is not like having an ice surface, for example. This is a surface that is very quickly turned from one user to another user. So it's, whether it's block time, hourly time, however that's scheduled. But I believe the model used in conversations with Mr. Wooden is that this would be $325 an hour. So using that based on optimizing its availability, so you've got all your evenings and your weekends when ice is not in, and that could be used. In other words, 29,000 square feet could be covered, okay, if you take the dashers and the glass out. Otherwise, you could leave the dashers and glass in, actually do a conversion, and have 20,000 square feet. Then it's very adaptable for box lacrosse, for futsal, for sports that are lower participation but very high activity level. It's very common in Europe, for example, for futsal. We use it in the Arctic Winter Games because it's played on a smaller surface and it's very competitive. So we have versatility, built into this product, and that's the intent.
Thanks. I'd be more comfortable if you had some idea how much money you'd make on it.
I was not involved with the actual financial modeling. I don't know if Chris, if anything's been presented or not.
Only to reiterate what Mr. Rada said through the chair, Assemblymember Whittleton, the rates have been established, the market demand has been established, and now, like Mr. Rada indicated, we have parties coming to us saying, great, now we've been looking for a surface, we're not soccer players, we're not track runners, we have a need that isn't being met, and the actual translation into an annual revenue line, I don't have the dollar figure right now, but as you can hear from the hourly rate, it has potential, especially with the fact that it sits on top of the ice surface and can be quickly and easily converted so that we don't have significant lag time or downtime between ice events versus non-ice events. So it's a quick turnaround, and I think will provide at least some additional revenue to SMG to help eradicate that operating deficit that we just went through.
Thanks. Just to embellish, what I foresee is, there is a lot of demand. People really want it. And when they want it is the 2 hours after school, 5 days a week, and then Saturdays and a little bit on Sunday, and not the rest of the hours. So extrapolating your hours is probably not necessarily a huge amount in a week. I don't know what the Dome, how busy. When I went there, it was always busy, but I went during prime time because that's when people go. So.
Well, through the chair, Mr. Whittleton, you're correct. But if you don't have a product, you don't have users, and you have no growth. And one of the things that's rapidly grown in this town is rugby, and there's a very large emphasis on youth rugby, particularly, and also with, as everybody understands, with Aleph Kelter now, a lot of notoriety to that, the Rugby Sevens. And the youth rugby program actually has representatives around the state. So Alaska Rugby is pulling this together. And if anybody participated a few days ago with the Nationals and the All Blacks that were up here, if you could see the enthusiasm that came from the youth that participated in the clinics, as well as those that, of course, went up to Justin Green's house to play on what is a world-class facility turf model, there are opportunities that are there. And what we don't have is a place for those people to play beyond the normal season. And there's no way for them to get better. This is a big opportunity. It's not the only opportunity, but to answer your question, there are users coming saying, we need time too. And if it's marketed properly and it's scheduled properly, then they're going to have a chance to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I see this as part of the overall redevelopment plan for Sullivan Arena. There's been changes over the years for this arena. When they were building it, they were planning on having a Continental Basketball Association team there that actually folded after they won the championship in 81-82. I mentioned that at the work session. And so they've had to develop and plan for changes over the years. They used to have the Great Alaska Shootout there as well. But my question is, what is the lifetime for a turf surface like this? Does this last, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years? I just wonder.
Okay, through the chair, Mr. Peterson. This product is 45 millimeters of certified shock padding and 8 millimeters of turf, high-density turf. It has a shelf life of roughly 15 years. So it's not a product that's going to go away. There are lots of products on the market that you can use and will not withstand the kind of use that we would anticipate. This is designed to be a model floor that's very versatile. It's very efficient in its transformation from conversions from ice to other events. It comes in 3x5 sections, weighs 21 pounds, as opposed to the stuff that's on the market comes in rolls, and you've got seams in this. This interlocks together. As fast as you lay it down, it interlocks together. You sweep it, and it's playable.
Is that all, sir?
Well, great. And so over a 15-year period of time, we will be able to recoup our investment many times over, I would assume.
I would hope so, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constant, sir. Item 9D20.
Yep, thank you very much, and thank you both for seeing a good investment in this part of town. It isn't just downtown, it isn't just Fairview, but it's a citywide investment, and really grateful for that. And so I'm happy to support this. I do want to suggest that you have an independent chemical test done on the turf, because I have seen lead in turf that comes across as non-lead turf, and we don't want people in there running around on it. So I do recommend an independent test.
Through the chair, Mr. Constant, I would be happy to provide a copy of that study. I already have it. This has been an ongoing issue in my 20 years involvement with artificial turf. There's been lots of allegations, none ever substantiated. And in fact, the latest report came out was almost identical to the one that came out 8 years ago. There's no contamination prospect whatsoever.
That's good, because I have a first-hand experience with it in a preschool here in town, and so thank you. We had it independently tested.
There are other products on the market.
Ms. Dembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question for you, John, but thank you for the information. I was just going to comment on the item in front of us. I was initially going to be a no vote on this, simply because we have some serious issues in front of us, and I didn't know if this was the highest best use. But listening to Mr. Weddleton's question, which was actually what I was going to ask, and doing some quick math here based on 10 hours a week, 52 weeks of the year, if that's a reasonable estimation, about 10 hours a week, you're looking at a revenue stream of potentially $169,000 in a year, which you could get your money back in less than 3 years. And I think it's our duty to have to manage the city's resources, the taxpayers' resources, to their highest best use. And if we can generate $169,000 a year, I look at it this way: it's $169,000 less than taxpayers have to directly pay, unless they're users. And I do like the cost payer, cost user kind of philosophy. So actually, after looking at the financial analysis of what this potentially could generate, and I think 10 hours a week is probably a modest a guesstimate, I think I will support it. But I do expect that this is heavily marketed, because you got to hit your marks. Yes, this may have come from a 2012 legislative grant, but we're still talking about $421,000. It's a lot of money. And if we have other things that need to be fixed, I could definitely prioritize this differently. But seeing how much we could get back for the taxpayers in managing this resource or this asset of the municipality, I think it makes sense as an investment. So you have convinced me through your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa France, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My original comment was to agree with Mr. Weddleton, which I still do, on the revenue projections. And thank you to Ms. Dombowski for pointing out that 10 hours a week over several years, well, even for 1 year, would be good return. Oops, sorry. My question is, can we wait till the next meeting on this one? Is there any risk to waiting to come up with firmer projections and also to factor in the dome situation? I don't know if that would be a consideration to look into buying surplus turf, should that become available or not? I guess that's 2 questions, or maybe that's 3 questions, sorry.
Okay, I'll try and answer. I might have to have a cue back from you through the chair, Ms. LaFrance. This is a product that is, it's a proprietary product. Its manufacturing process, delivery, and installation takes some time. The longer we wait, the less we get to use it. The less we use it, the less revenue is generated. The problem right now, and actually I've been working on this quite a bit, had a conference call, and the manufacturer indicated that if we don't order, right now there's 1 order ahead of us. And I'll tell you how people look at this product. The order that's in right now ahead of us is for Robert Kraft, who's the New England Patriots owner. He's buying 20,000 square feet for his grandkids. We are next. If we don't approve it, we'll lose our position. The longer we don't have it, we don't have it to use. So I understand there might be hesitation, but I would urge you to move forward with this. It's not to compete with the dome. I understand. I know those people, and you know, I'd love to be able to say it won't have an effect. I think it'll have a very marginal effect, to tell you the truth, because the other users are going to start flocking to this. So to delay, I wouldn't recommend it.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant, one last comment before we vote?
Yeah, and this is to kind of Ms. LaFrance's question, and I think a more direct answer for why we would go with a product that's specific is that I believe it's manufactured to go on ice, and the use is a very specific use in a very specific area, and I would wonder if there are real challenges to refitting turf that goes on concrete or earth to go onto ice. And it seems like the manufactured direct, like for this purpose use, is a higher value even than losing 2 weeks or a month or something. It's super important to have the right piece at the right time in the right place.
Through the chair, Mr. Constant, I've done a lot of research on this. This is designed, unlike places who have tried to use rolls because of the cold or the conditions. They typically buckle, seams come apart. This is an interlocking system. It stays in place. And when you make your cuts, those are labeled areas, so when you drop them back in, they go back in. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. But the balance of it, when you do the entire floor, you don't even worry about that. As fast as you take them off a pallet, you drop them down, you interlock it, and you have a floor. So you don't run those other risks.
Okay, there's nobody else in the queue. Normally I don't debate, but just one point. I was reading the AM that came with this. It said this project will also enhance Sullivan Arena's revenue generation capabilities. We've been blasting SMG for living to the contract they negotiated with the last administration. We've got to look at this memo and understand we have to help them too. If this helps them raise some money, even if it's only $200,000, that's $200,000 less that taxpayers will have to pick up if they run a deficit. So I appreciate you bringing this. I'm going to be voting on this. Let's bring this up. Please vote. Okay. That passed. My thanks for everybody's debate on that because it's an important issue. We're now going to take, that completes our consent agenda, except for those items we'll hold for a little further discussion later on. So we're now going to take a 5-minute break. There is no dinner being provided, but for the good of the body, we're taking the 5-minute break. And it will be.
There's some ones where...
Thanks for reminding me. Whittington, I need...
Mr. Chair, I move to postpone indefinitely.
What, ma'am? John's going to make the motion.
So, yeah.
John? You want to make a motion, item 11, to postpone it indefinitely?
I already did.
You did that, Amy, and it was second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The administration asked for this, HLB. They'll bring it back in a year to us, so that's the reason. We don't need to go forward with this item.
Okay.
I think they understood the sentiment of the body, so we're moving on. So please vote on postponing this item indefinitely. Okay, who hasn't joined us? We're up to 8, now we're at 9. Mr. Dyson's absent. 9's enough. Lock her down. That is postponed indefinitely.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Moment of personal privilege, Mr. Costick. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier in the consent agenda, we made an appointment of Bryce Klug to the Historic Preservation Commission without asking if he were here and would like to make comment. So I'd like to invite Mr. Klug down.
That's fine. Look at the meeting, sir. Thank you for agreeing to serve on that commission.
Thank you. Good evening.
Anything you'd like to say to us?
Just real briefly, I grew up in Anchorage and grew up since I was 1965 and seen the city change. I'm a licensed architect and looking forward to helping maintain our historic preservation and historic
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Next item in front of us is item 14A, Resolution AR 2017-234, Resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly adopting the citizen naming panel's unanimous recommendation to name the dedicated municipal park at 1301 Muldoon Road as Chinatsu Muldoon Park. Public hearing on this item is open. If you wish to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
And we have Mr. Dunbar's aide here to read us talk from him.
Okay.
He's serving the country over in Mongolia right now.
Okay.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jessica Kim, and I'm speaking on behalf of Assemblyman Forrest Dunbar as his aide.
Ma'am, could you pull the microphone
Yeah.
down and start
Mhm.
over again, please?
Yeah.
That microphone's terrible. I apologize.
It's okay. I'm Jessica Kim, and I'm speaking on behalf of Forrest Dunbar as his aide. To my colleagues on the Assembly, I will keep this brief, as I know we have a habit of discussing for long periods measures that are going to pass unanimously. I hope that this is such a unanimous ordinance. However, I would be remiss if I did not use this opportunity to recognize the neighbors, community members, and staffers that made this possible. The idea for using the Dena'ina name for the park came from the neighborhood. The people who served on the naming panel came from the neighborhood. The vision for the park itself and many years of work came from the neighborhood. In particular, I would like to recognize Jaren Lowther, Stuart Grenier, Aaron Leggett, and Rick Urin for their service on the naming panel. I'd also like to commend Steve Refuse for his dedicated staffing of this project. Long before this project was completed, indeed long before Anchorage sprang up on the shores of Takotnu, the creek running through this park was known as Chauncenu. The Dena'ina people and the Dena'ina language lived then and live today within the borders of our shared city. I am very pleased that the naming panel has recommended that this park will bear the original name of the creek, as well as the name of one of the early leaders of our city. In a small way, this park will be part of a broader Alaska Native cultural renaissance that today lifts up our people. For a name can convey a set of values, and this name adopted after careful thought and deliberation reflects values that Anchorage can be proud of. Thank you for your time, and I urge your approval.
Thank you for being here, ma'am. We appreciate it. Debate portion, Mr. Peterson, it's your area, sir, too.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's unfortunate that my colleague, Mr. Dunbar, can't be here this evening, but I'm glad that he was able to send a pre-written message to us. All the members, by the way, of the naming committee are present tonight, and I wanted to thank them all for their work on coming up with this name. And I also wanted to make the members of the Assembly aware that we actually got really good news within the last week. We received a Department of Interior grant for $750,000, $750,000 to be used to complete Phase 2 of this park. And Phase 1 is under construction right now. $500,000 was approved for the start of Phase 2 earlier this year, but with the grant now we should be able to finish Phase 2, hopefully maybe by the end of the building season next year, and if not then by sometime in 2019. So this destination park in Muldoon that's been a dream for many people in East Anchorage for as many as 20 years is now becoming a reality, and it's really, really great news for the people in the neighborhood to see it finally really happen. So just wanted to fill everyone in on with that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually wondering if maybe you, Mr. Peterson, or Ms. Kim, you could give us the correct pronunciation of the park?
Chauncenu.
Chauncenu.
We
Okay.
have somebody that may be able to help you.
Yalida, my name is Aaron Leggett. I'm the curator
of Alaska History and Culture at the Anchorage Museum. Leggett, Leggett. I'm the curator of Alaska History and Culture at the Anchorage Museum. I'm the former Dena'ina cultural historian at the Alaska Native Heritage Center. I'm the treasurer for the Native Village of Eklutna, and I'm a director of Eklutna Inc., and I'm a speaker of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina Kanaga, or Dena'ina language. The name Chanch Nu. Chanch Nu. And it means Grass Creek. And just for the record, when the early map makers came through the area and they asked the Dena'ina, what do you guys call this creek? We said Chanchnu. They wrote it down as Chester. We said close enough. So I just want to let that be known that there was no old man Chester who homesteaded along the creek somewhere and had a still out in the woods when Anchorage was a dry city. So again, Chanchnu. Chanan, thank you.
Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate it. Anything else, Mr. Rivera?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Part of the reason why I asked that is because names are important, and it's important that we pronounce them correctly and that we honor them correctly. And I hope that this is the start of a tradition that we continue on this body of honoring the long tradition, thousands of years of Dena'ina culture on this land. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also delighted with this effort. I sent a note to all of you a week or two ago about my efforts on a state level. And I'm not to belabor it, but I personally am offended by the arrogance of latecomers to this country who ignored people that had been here and prospered for thousands of years and arrogantly assigned names to things that had often honored people who not only had never been here, probably never thought about us. And so I appreciate this. I hope the day comes when we go further, and what I try to do on the legislative level, and that's renaming some things with a rational process of overlap to take care of some administrative things. And I got to tell you that many of the Native or Alaskan or Aboriginal people's names were far more colorful and appropriate than the ones that were assigned by the early explorers and exploiters of this country. And also that the Eklutna people that Ms. Demoski and I represent are extraordinarily good citizens. If I was them and had been treated and their lands treated the way they have, I would be angry and resentful for at least 100 years and maybe longer. They watched their very significant salmon runs be destroyed. They have gone away, and much of their land mined for gravel and then used as an informal dump and so on. And Eklutna people that we represent have been extraordinary citizens. You go out and look at the school sites, the ball fields, and a number of other parks and so on. That was all donated land by the Eklutna people. And one of my predecessors in the Alaska legislature said Eagle River has a unique relationship with Anchorage. We send them the best water in the world, and they send us garbage and sex offenders. Mr. Moski and I do not have a bad attitude about Anchorage. We are delighted to be a part of it, but are glad to see the people we represent being honored in this small but significant way, and we'd like to see more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you. You know, my district on the southern edge is bordered by this creek on the other side of our city. And so there's definitely now some interest peaked in my imagination of how do we carry forward this question of naming. And what comes to mind is that the Parks Foundation and the Parks Department have been engaged in a wayfinding project that is in the middle of its stream and pretty well planned out, but seems like there might be some opportunities for additional elements to be included that could pay true honor to the first people of this land, and I would like to see something along those lines be contemplated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Any other comments from Assembly members? Just one comment from me is this project's been going on for a long time. When I first came on the body in 91, we're talking of a park there in Muldoon. In fact, Mr. Dyson was on the body when I came here in 91. I never left. I'm not sure why you left and came back, Fred, but anyway, it's good to get this project finally dealt with. Muldoon people have wanted this for a long time. Mr. Dyson, any other comments there?
Yeah, perhaps ill-advised, but I also have tried to be involved in an effort to see the state seal and the state song give some credit to Alaska's Native people. And if you look at the city's logo, there's nothing there that represents the people who have been here for several thousand years and prospered and contributed. And someday I'd be very interested in working with others to see what I consider more fairness and truth in even those kinds of things. Thank you.
Well, this is the start, so we need to vote on this. Please vote. That's approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14B. Item 14B is ordinance AO 2017-99, an ordinance changing the bidding review board from 9 to 5 members from the purchasing department. And along with this, there's an AM with it, 5/21/2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clear with the record, and spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? It's moving to second discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That is approved unanimously. Next item in front of us, item 14C, ordinance AO 2017-100, ordinance conveying and clearing title of Park Reserve, Port Woronzof Terrace subdivision to William and Rosemary Borchett from Department of Law and accompanying a same memorandum, AM 5/22/2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name, come for the record, spare your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing saying no, in public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Constant, you're first in line, sir.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Falsey, I'm guessing. And the question is, with this transfer, does the deed restriction still hold that this will be green space?
Through the chair, Mr. Constant, I don't know that there is a deed restriction. There is a plat note, and the plat note requires the parcel to be used for park purposes. It would be a private park, as it probably should have been throughout its history.
Okay, so beyond the semantics, then the plat note then says it should be green space. So then, should we expect that it would not be developed into a house?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any discussion or comments from Assembly members? Not seeing any, please vote. Item is approved unanimously. Next item in front is item 14D, Resolution AR 2017-246, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for marijuana cultivation facility with license number M11635, doing business as Cloudberry, located at 3307 Smenard Road in Anchorage. Smenard Community Council, case 2017-0083, Municipal Clerk's Office. And there's this accompanying a same memorandum, AM 5/16/2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, current for the record, and spell your last name if you would, please. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing No one. Public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
We'll move second for approval. Mr. Whittleton, sir.
We reviewed this at the Community and Economic Development Committee last Thursday, and the committee recommended approval.
Mr. Dombrowski, ma'am.
Thank you. If I could have someone from planning come up, I'm going to ask the same question on each of these applicants. I don't see notated in the packet, and maybe it's because I missed it, the actual closest protected land use and the distance. Hi, Ryan.
Through the chair. Thank you, Ms. Dombrowski. There is no protected land use within 1,000 feet. I know 1,000 feet is kind of your benchmark for these cases. There is nothing within 1,000 feet of the petition site.
Okay, the reason I'm really scrutinizing this is because I know of a parcel kind of in Mr. Trainey's area where they actually built a separate fence, so you would have to walk around it to measure it in order to make the distance because they're right next to a school. This is not that one, right?
This is not that one.
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Keep me abreast of that one, okay?
You'll see it shortly.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Other comments from Assembly members? Please vote. That item was approved. Next item in front of us is item 14E, Resolution AR 2017-257, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for a marijuana cultivation facility with the license number M11778, doing business as Old School and Boofy LLC, located at 10263 High Road, Unit 5, Bayshore Calumet Community Council. And as accompanying item 14E1, the same memorandum, AM 537-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. They may wish to testify. Please come forward. State your name and career for the record. Spell your last name and tell us what town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing seeing no one, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Wilton, sir.
This was also reviewed by the Community Economic Development Committee last Thursday, and we recommended approval. And I would just want to highlight one thing: it's not uncommon with the marijuana businesses going in that when they go forward for their permits, unrelated to the fact really that they're marijuana, but they ran into Title 21 issues with the property that they're moving into. So these business entrepreneurs are facing requirements to develop the property that really drops onto the property owner, and it's been frustrating for them. We've seen this many times before. So I guess I just say that to acknowledge the difficulties they've had, and before you sign that lease, check with your landlord that he'll take care of those things. So anyway, but we did recommend approval on this one. Thank you.
Any other comments from Assembly members? I want to thank the applicant, too, for showing up here. It's good to see you here. Ms. Dombrowski, ma'am.
If Ryan could come back up, I want to ask him the same question.
Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Dombrowski. I apologize. I can't speak to if there's any protected land uses within 1,000 feet, but I can confirm that the separation distance for 500 feet has been met.
Okay, and this one, it says Unit 5 is vacant. Was this a vacant particular building, or the entire lot was vacant?
I believe just the unit that the petitioner is occupying was vacant at the time that they rented it, but there are other businesses that occupy units within that commercial complex.
That's what I thought. What was the use before? Do you know?
I apologize. I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. I'd like to ask the applicant if they know what their closest protected land use is to this particular location. I suppose it's I-1, so I doubt you'll have anything too close, but I just want to make sure.
Michael Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N, and I'm the applicant of Old School and Buffy LLC. There is nothing within 1,000 feet that's anything. There's 10 other businesses that's in this like industrial complex, and they're mostly automotive, pull tab place, wood flooring type shop, and packaging and labeling business that has to do with the marijuana industry.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. And so you don't have a school anywhere near you?
No.
Okay. I appreciate your comments. The reason I'm critiquing these so closely tonight is because I know of somebody who's in an industrial area that's really close to a school, and I just want to make sure I know which applicants I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowski. Mr. Constant, sir.
Thank you. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank both you and Buffy. You know, I have been engaged with your business association for a while, learning kind of what the impacts are going to be in my community. And several of the meetings that I attended were hosted inside of your property. And it's great to be a member of the community and a leader in that way. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wanted to ask Mr. Morgan if he'd made any progress in the last 6 days with his landlord in making some of the changes that are required.
The enforcement for the Muni has processed the letter that has been sent to the owner, and I've been in contact with the owner's son, and we're trying to get it resolved. And I believe that we are moving forward on this. And I believe being approved tonight will get that one step farther, that we'll get it done.
Great. I'm glad we can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. There are no other comments from assembly members, so please vote. That was approved unanimously. Congratulations, sir. Now tell your landlord to fix his building so you can get in there. Next item in front of us is item 14F, Resolution AR 2017-258, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving a marijuana license and special land use permit for a marijuana retail sales establishment with license number M11638, doing business as Catalyst Cannabis Company, located at 9900 Old Stewart Highway, Unit 4, Bayshore Client Community Council. Accompanying the same memorandum with it, AM 538-2017. Public hearing on this item is not open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, query for the record, and spell your last name. Social part town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no one, what's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Assembly discussion, Mr. Wilton, sir.
The Community and Economic Development Committee also looked at this one very carefully last Thursday and recommended approval.
Ms. Dombowski, ma'am.
I have a question for Mr. Yelland, if he can come back. Same question.
Through the chair, Ms. Dombowski. The separation distance to the nearest protected land use is over 500 feet, but there are protected land uses within 1,000 feet of the petition.
And what are those protected land uses? Any of them a school or daycare?
There are child care centers within 1,000 feet of the petition site.
Are there any schools?
I can't say off the top of my head.
Okay. If the applicant's here, I'd like for them to come down.
Welcome to the meeting. Welcome, sir. Can we get your name for the record, please?
Yes, William Schneider, SCHNEIDER.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dombowski, ma'am?
Hi, Mr. Schneider. Thank you for coming down. What is the closest school to your facility?
I'm not sure what the closest school is.
Do you think there's one within 1,000 feet?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I asked specifically about schools is because though the municipality adopted within the corpus of Anchorage a 500-foot separation distance, there have been instances nationwide where the feds have come in within 1,000 feet and closed down operations. And I just want applicants to be very aware of that before you start your business, because you might be fulfilling the intent here in the municipality, but you may run into issues federally. So I just wanted to make sure that you're very aware of that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from assembly members? Not seeing any, please vote. Congratulations, sir. You got your license. Next item in front of us is item 14G, Resolution AR 2017-552, a resolution of Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $125,000 as a grant from the Bluebird Philanthropies to the Miscellaneous Operational Grants Fund 261, Office of Economic Community Development for Innovative Team Grant Program. It's accompanying same memorandum, AM 520-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. They may wish to testify. Come forward, state your name for the record, spell your last name, and tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying none, public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Need a second. Discussion from Assembly members. Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. I noticed that this is a 3-year grant, $1.5 million over that period of time, and I was just curious. It says it's a program to help mayors and cities generate bold new ideas to solve big pressing problems, and was wondering if someone would be able, at a high level, to just indicate what the focus is.
Chris Schutte, Director of Office in Economic and Community Development. Through the chair, Ms. LaFrance, as much as I wanted to turn to Brendan Babb, the Chief Innovation Officer, to answer your question, I didn't see him sitting behind me, so I'm going to do my best to jump through it. The Bloomberg grant that was awarded to the municipality is focused on workforce development, on improving housing and addressing homelessness, and I believe the third one, is healthcare. Thank you. Like pop quiz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Schutte, one of those items popped my curiosity, homelessness, and I was wondering if there's a potential for us to get, for us on the body to get reports on what the work is. That'd be great. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely.
Schutte.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Same thing. The issue of homelessness, of course, gets my attention immediately. And I am real curious to know that this is a data project, right? And so this provides a really good opportunity to put on the record a request that's been made, and maybe your team can help. Mm-hmm. And the request is that through data analytics, we come up with a spreadsheet and a map that shows, probably back to about 2009, the investment in homeless services by assembly district, by zip code, by council district, just so we can start to see. And I would love to be part of the discussion of how we get there, because there are a lot of metrics that could be really valuable in understanding the disparate impacts of our policy. And so I'm really glad to hear that the mayor is prioritizing the data side of this question, because we need to know what we're doing, not just kind of do it. So thank you very much.
Through the chair, I think we can accomplish that. No problem.
Mr. Wilson, sir.
Just to highlight what Mr. Constant said, I think the point is he's frustrated that we're spending a huge amount of money trying to help the homeless in his area, but scarce little in South Anchorage. So if you could spend most of that money helping us in South Anchorage instead of his district, I think he'd be happier, and I would too. Thank you.
I got nothing to say over that. Neither does he.
Arm wrestle.
Okay. That's all with the questions we've got. There's nobody else for debate. Please vote. That is approved. Next item in front is item 14H, Resolution AR 2017-254, Resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage approving a master tax exempt lease/purchase agreement loan and appropriating an amount not to exceed $5,800,000 to the Information Technology Fund 607 and the appropriation of those funds to the Capital Improvement Fund 608 for SAP implementation. Coming in the Finance Department, the same memorandum accompanies it. AM 536-2017. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. State your name, clearly for the record, spell your last name. Tell us what part of town you live in. Anyone at all? Hearing seen on public testimony is closed. What's the wish of the body? I know you don't want to, but you have to, so make the motion.
Reluctantly move to approve.
Could I get a reluctant
Reluctantly
second,
second.
please? Okay. Mr. Wellington, you must love it. You made the first motion to approve it.
Well, you know, you can see the South Anchorage people moving this thing because we're so excited about the money to help our homeless coming our way.
Okay, discussion. Mr. Wellington, anything?
Well, I guess not much to say. I mean, just so everyone knows, no one is happy about the expense of this SAP program. It's something the city has to do. It was carefully vetted by the mayor when he got in, and there was a pause on it, and he had a committee look at it, and they said, move forward. I've been looking and talking to people who use it, and they say it will work, it'll be good when it's going, and it's always hard to implement. So we are very, very close to having this fired up and ready to run early October, and I hope that this is the last huge dollar amount that we have to put in to get us to that finish line. Thank you.
Miss LaFrance, ma'am.
I wholeheartedly second what Mr. Weddleton said. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yep, not that I didn't take it seriously before, but this project has really taught me to look closely at these big projects because this is awful. I've had more complaints this week about how we could be spending this money, so this is awful.
Ms. LaFrance, again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question for the administration, if someone would be willing.
Go ahead, they're here. Mr. Abbott is primed and ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Abbott, what would be, given what appears to be our limited options, vote yes, vote no, what would happen if we vote down this $5.8 million request?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. LaFrance, the project would essentially come to a halt at this stage. The funds that have been appropriated by the Assembly in the past have been fully committed to date and will not allow us to conclude the project as it has been anticipated. So we would have a completely designed, partially tested, and unimplemented enterprise resource program. So it would, fill a lot of disks and a lot of white binders, but it would offer little or no benefit to the municipality in its current condition.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Dembowski, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always have a lot to say about SAP, being
Don't worry,
the longtime critic of it. But, Mr. Chair, I would like for the Assembly's independent reviewer, Zig, I see him in the audience, to come forward and just give a brief summation in less than 3 minutes of your analysis of where we are today and our ability what impact you would see if we, in fact, basically voted this down would be, in my view, scrapping SAP. So I'll let you take it whatever direction you'd like to go.
Zay, before you answer her question, I want to congratulate you on being the only person that figured out what this was going to actually cost. Months ago, years ago, when you said 81 million, everybody said, "Pooh-paw, you just know what he's talking about." Congratulations. This will put it 81.5, I think.
I don't know if that's a...
Now you can go ahead.
Zig Burzen, Zico Consulting, Mr. Chair, and Madam Dabrowski. I think that Mr. Abbott's comments are pretty much right on line. We've had this conversation before. If you don't finish the project, if you don't actually implement the SAP system, you don't have a capital item. And if you don't have a capital item, then whatever you've spent on that particular project becomes an operating expense. And that could be a real problem. So you certainly should finish, and I think there have been a variety of reasons and a variety of conversations about that. Yeah, you've spent what you have allocated, and you now need some additional funding to finish. And you're really not going to be able to finish without paying SAP for some of their services to wrap things up in the next 3 months.
Ms. Dombrowski, anything else, man?
Thank you. Zig, I don't have anything else for you. I just have a couple of quick comments.
Thank you, Zig.
I think, Mr. Trainee, I think you're the only member of this body that was on when SAP started in 2011. And with you, I think I've been one of the most vocal opponents of it. I think I've voted no on this project more than anyone. And that was through both administrations, frankly. And I think there's blame to go around through the Sullivan administration, through the Berkowitz administration, and through multiple assemblies. I hear people blame one or the other. Frankly, looking back on it, hindsight's 20/20. I wish we would have gone Oracle instead of SAP, but I wasn't here to make that decision. I think what we have before us as a body, as a city, as taxpayers, is two bad decisions, basically. It sucks to spend $81 million on a project that was supposed to cost about $11. But we are where we are. When the Berkowitz administration took over in 2015, we were at $45 million. And in the last 2 years now, we have spent, let's say, $35 million. So everybody's done their share of spending money. It's painful, and I'm looking at it from a fiscal perspective of how can we, with the least impact going forward to the taxpayers, finish this debacle that is SAP. We have two choices, in my opinion. We can either finish it, which tonight before us, between three items, we have $10.8 million, basically. So we can vote for that, or we can stop, pick a new project, and start all over again. And that, to me, would be so much more than $10.8 million. I think the taxpayers of this community have taken it in the shorts enough. I want to stop the bleeding. And frankly, I hate SAP, but this is the best way I know how to do it. So I begrudgingly will vote for this. But I can tell the administration clearly. I said this to you, Mayor Berkowitz, when you came in, that I'd give you one shot to get it done. $35 million is one hell of a shot. But I will not vote for one more penny after this. And that's where I'm at. So I expect the administration to really use every penny wisely. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, because I have to say this, I listened to the work session on Friday. And something that was said really bothered me, because I remember when the pause happened, and then we had this big debate about going forward, what this meant, and the recommendation came that we should go forward. There's been a lot of good work done. We're changing the game plan, but we were going to go forward. And then at the work session, Mr. Thurn, I heard you say that basically nothing we had done before in $45 million was salvageable, and you had to start all over. I wish I would have known that when I voted after the pause and you guys told us that we were going to go forward. We had some good work, because to me it sounded like a changing conversation there. If I would have known we were starting all over $35 million again, I can guarantee I would not have been at all supportive of going with SAP. So that really bothered me. And I just wanted to say that on the record, because I don't like it when stories change.
Thank you, Mr. Dombrowski. Mr. Rivera, sir, on SAP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually echo a lot of the sentiments of Ms. Dombrowski. I've gotten, as well as Mr. Constant, a lot of concerns from my constituents because this seriously hampers the public trust in government to operate efficiently. And I've worked with municipal employees. I know them to be hardworking individuals who want to get the job done as quickly and efficiently as possible. It's easy to place blame on earlier administrations, as we should, but I want everyone to be aware that we are making the vote right now, that we are the ones that are going to be voting yes or no on spending this money. So the responsibility from here on out really lies with us and with this administration to get this done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Steele, sir.
I don't know if I want to talk or not, but echoing in my mind are my professors in graduate school that says you don't consider sunk cost when deciding whether or not to go forward with the project. And we've had a number of opportunities along the way where we did consider sunk costs, costs that we've already expended. But you have to think also about where we were. We were in the dark ages, just slightly above green eye shades and notebooks in terms of our data acquisition, processing, and display capabilities. We got GIS, which helped us with display activities, but we had to bring all the enterprise committees who had their own systems going. We made a decision to do that, to bring them in, to have the whole municipal operation working on the same scheme, same software, and get their hardware up to date. We've done also a little bit of that, getting that hardware up to date, because we kind of know what we need now. Well, I believe that Mr. Alden and the current team has been doing a good job. We're still in a fix. We've got a contractor that's from way down south, and that causes problems because they come and go. But bottom line is, we're going to have a good product when it comes, and you don't stop a project at this stage unless it just is not going to work. And I have no indication that that the program as designed is going to work. I hope this is the last increase that we have to find the funding for, and it has been expensive. It's almost time to start for a new system. Anyway, I'll be a yes vote just because you can't cut it off at this point. You got to go through, or you've wasted all that money.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, sir.
Yeah, just a clarification, thank you. Earlier today I asked a question about the sum of money, $5.8 million, versus the other dollar amounts that were in there that seemed to add up to 10, and I asked the administration to clarify, and the answer I got was that we're just appropriating 5.8, that the difference is, those are the ways we're spending the money that we're appropriating. So it's not $10 million, which is cold comfort.
Of $81.5 million, sir.
Yeah, it's cold comfort to think we're only appropriating 5, not 10, but I just wanted to be 5.8, not 10. It's just the 5.8. Thank you.
Ms. LaFrance, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also be supporting this resolution. However, it's my understanding that this will be the last big appropriation or last increase, as Mr. Steele indicated. And I know there's no way to know for sure, but I would have a hard time supporting an additional $5.8 million in another month or so. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've been involved in this for a little over 3 years myself. I'm not an expert in ERP systems, and even though Zig has tried to bring us up to date and bring me into the 21st century, I unfortunately don't think he's made a whole lot of progress. But the situation that I think we find ourselves in tonight, and I feel that I find myself in about this vote, reminds me of a saying that an old friend of mine from Louisiana used to say, we're forced to make the least worst vote that there is, and I guess the least worst would be to approve this, and so I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
Other comments from the members? Here, John, you can play chair for a minute. I've got a comment to make on this. You know, the problem was the last administration didn't do their homework. Elvie and I later, as we got into this, we called San Diego. We said, how did it work for you? We talked to Chief Fiscal Officer. We had her call us and talk to us in a meeting. It was a disaster for them, and the problem was the bad implementer they had. They finally did get it right when they got SAP to implement it, but they spent $35 million, I think was the last one. Portland tried to do it, and they had problem after problem with it. Hershey Company, I'm told, almost went bankrupt. $100 million on this thing. It's a good program, they tell us, but The problem is we're so far into it, we can't get out of it now. The last administration should have done their homework and checked where it had been successfully put on and who the implementer was that did it successfully. Why they didn't go with SAP to begin with, I have no idea. But that's up to that last administration to deal with. This poor administration came on, and they came on at about $40 million already in the hole. And there was somebody that said, if you're in a hole, quit digging it. And this administration didn't keep digging it. It kept digging it because there's no way to get out of it unless you make this thing work. So I'm telling the administration is, on the 2nd of October, if it's not working, please don't come to work the next day. You're not going to find it from the assembly. Because we're tired of it. We spend enough money on this. I expect this thing to work. And Alden, you've done a great job. We appreciate what you've done. But we've got to get this thing to where it's actually working and start for our public to start to get back some of the money that they put into this program. So, Mr. Steele, you weren't on before. Go ahead.
I did. I want to thank Zig for all his input. We were extremely frustrated at the time and not particularly happy with the administration. And the Assembly decided that we needed some unbiased, untainted, objective information on this. And Zig did a great job keeping us up to speed, asking the questions at every one of our work sessions, and I don't know where we would be if we hadn't had Zig to help us out. So at least some things were done right. We spent a lot of money, and I hope we get a great product out at the end.
Okay. You guys ready for this? Please vote. That is approved. We're now going back to those items for a little further discussion. We'll start with item 9D17. Mr. Rivera, you pulled that one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve.
That is item AM 568, 2017. Motion is made to approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from Assembly members. If not, please vote. We've got one more. Barbara, who hasn't voted?
Mr. Jason.
Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. That is approved. Next one in front of us is item 9D18, a memorandum AM 568, 2017, Chair Journal number 1. It's up for Assembly action on this. I need a motion to approve.
Second.
Need a second. It's a business item. There we go. Any discussion for Assembly members? If not, please vote. Mr. Constant, you need to vote, sir. That is approved. Next item in front is item 9D19, same memorandum AM 571, 2017. I'll need a motion to approve on that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Need a second? Okay. Please vote. Are you missing anybody? Okay. That is approved. That completes our consent agenda. We're now down to special orders. There are none. Audience participation, item 17. Is there anybody that wishes to address the segment on any items? You'll have 3 minutes. Come forward. Give us your name. Spell your last name. Tell us where you live at. Not hearing and seeing none. That's closed. We'll move on to Assembly comments. Mr. Rivera, sir.
No comments, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Steele, sir. No comment. Melissa France, ma'am. Mr. Wilton, sir.
Nothing.
Mr.
Did we deal with this? The temporary designation of the licensed
Yes, we did.
premises? That was a consent agenda.
Consent agenda item. It's done.
All right. Nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Croft, sir.
That's what I was asking.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I want to share with everyone, I had a hell of a week, and most of it is sub rosa, below the surface, and I won't comment on to the details, but I'll say this was the most interesting week of my assembly term, and there's more to come on the topic, so thank you.
Okay. Stembowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to wish my daughter, Kennedy, happy 21st birthday. She just celebrated her 21st birthday, so I want to say happy birthday to Kennedy. And I have a request of the administration. I've heard that there was a fire tonight up on the hillside, and being that the hillside doesn't have any fire hydrants, I would love to get the information on the response time to the closest tender to that fire tonight, if you can provide that to me, Mr. Abbott. Thank you.
Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad the mayor came back because I want to say something complimentary. It has been a fairly steep learning curve for me to get back or try to get back up to speed on things, and I'm impressed with how things are being done. One of my pet peeves is official papers that have acronyms on them that are not defined. And this administration is doing better than any I've ever worked with on a state or local level, for which I'm appreciative. And in my smart mouth mode, I've said it's hard to overestimate the ignorance of legislators. And it's very helpful to, when a piece of paper is before us, to tell us what the things mean and so on. And it's very easy for any organization to get into code words that everybody on the inside understands and those on the outside don't. And these pieces of paper are not only for us to look at, but there are citizens out there that actually go online and look at these things, and we need to do all we can to make them as clear and understandable for those citizens. And we can always do more, but I'm impressed with what you're doing. And secondly, Mr. Mayor, I'm impressed with Mr. Abbott. I've never yet asked him a question that he didn't know a lot more than I ever wanted to hear. And I'm astonished at the number of things he's on top of. Now, I'm easy to fool, but I'm very impressed. And I guess part of it, I started out with a bias in his favor, knowing his father, who in my view was an American hero and so on. But I'll have my criticisms at times, but I'm impressed, and I'm impressed with the competence of your city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Chair will entertain a motion
Move to adjourn. Ooh, I beat
We're
you.
adjourned.